Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for May the 22nd. Today we are reading together Psalm number 62. The 62nd Psalm has been given the title in my Bible, Trust in God Alone. From that title, you can imagine that this is a psalm of trust, a psalm of confidence. The superscription tells us it is for the choir director, according to Jeduthun. A psalm of David. Jeduthun is also mentioned in Psalm 39. I think it's going to be mentioned in another psalm coming up. And then the name itself is found in 1 Chronicles 16 and 1 Chronicles 25. And Jeduthun was a temple singer. So it seems that there was something about this individual that had to do with this particular Psalm of David. We're not given a historical context to this psalm. We're just told that it is a Psalm of David. But as we read this psalm, you could probably come to understand pretty quickly that it certainly could fit a number of situations that David found himself in while he was king over Israel, and even before he was king over Israel. But let me get the text up on the screen and we'll read along together here. Psalm 62. Psalm 62, beginning in verse number 1. I am at rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will never be shaken. How long will you threaten a man? Will all of you attack as if he were a leaning wall or a tottering fence? They only plan to bring him down from his high position. They take pleasure in lying. They bless with their mouths, but they curse inwardly. Selah. Rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will not be shaken. My salvation and glory depend on God, my strong rock. My refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts before him. God is our refuge. Selah. Common people are only a vapor. Important people, an illusion or a lie. Together, on a scale, they weigh less than a vapor. Place no trust in oppression or false hope in robbery. If wealth increases, don't set your heart on it. God has spoken once. I have heard this twice. Strength belongs to God, and faithful love belongs to you, Lord. For you repay each according to his works. That is Psalm number 62. All right, within this psalm, we do see these elements of trust. We see these elements of confidence, and there's also elements of wisdom within this psalm as well. Specifically, once we get down to verse number 9, I would say verses 9 through 12 give us a great deal of wisdom concerning who is worthy of our trust. I am at rest in God alone. Two things here at rest. There's peace here that David is referring to. Instead of there being anxieties, instead of there being nervousness, instead of there being trouble, he is at rest. He is at peace in God alone. I want to note that God alone, that is repeated in verse number 5. It is rest in God alone. So he, according to David here, is the only one in whom he can find real rest and real peace. There's also salvation that comes from him. And I think we could imply here another idea of it being alone in him. Excuse me. I'm at rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him. He, once again, alone is three things: my rock, my salvation, my stronghold. And I will never be shaken. And these are all ideas that we have seen already within the Psalter on a number of occasions. So we might be wondering in this one, okay, why is David expressing this? Why is he expressing the reality that God is a place of safety, his rock? Why is he expressing the salvation that comes from God? Why is he expressing God as a stronghold? Why expressing that he will never be shaken? Well, it is because there are opportunities in life when people might be shaken. For David here, within the context of this psalm, it is the wicked man or wicked men who might cause him to be someone who is shaken. Verses 3 and 4 talk about the wicked person. How long will you threaten a man? Will all of you attack as if he were a leaning wall or a tottering fence? Many believe that this is in reference to David, that they viewed David as someone who is a leaning wall, somebody who's ready to fall over, a tottering fence, someone who's ready to fall apart. Whenever they view David, this is what they viewed: a weak person, a person right on the edge of ruin. But the reality is that this is not the case. That's what this psalm tells us, that David was not ready to fall apart, that David was not shaken, that he was not ready to be defeated, but in fact, God was with him. Verse 4 tells us what they tried to do. They made a plan to bring him down from his high position. They took pleasure in their lying. They blessed with their mouths, but they cursed inwardly. Again, the idea here is there's an opportunity for David to be shaken. There's an opportunity for David to be defeated. His enemies saw him as if he were weak and easy prey, but that simply is not the case, because these threats are made nothing based upon the first two verses, and then also based upon verses 5 through 8. Rest in God alone. Again, find peace in the face of this opposition that you're facing, David, in the face of these enemies who are wanting to attack you and destroy you, who are making plans for your demise, who might speak to you well with their mouths, but inwardly they're cursing you. You can find peace even against them in God alone. Why? Because God is my hope. My hope comes from him. Verses 1 and 5 are basically the same. There's just a switching of a couple of terms. In the first verse, my salvation comes from him. In verse 5, my hope comes from him. Again, not exactly synonymous terms, but terms that have a lot of overlap. Verse 6, he alone, God alone is, again, here's these three descriptions: my rock, my salvation, my confidence. I will not be shaken. My salvation and glory depends on God, my strong rock. My refuge is in him. There is a dependence that David speaks about here in these verses. He recognizes that on his own, David would probably be well described as a leaning wall or a tottering fence. On his own, David did not have much hope of great success. I mean, after all, who was he? He was a young son and a shepherd. He was nobody. Somebody that the father even forgot about. His father even forgot about. But with God, he's completely different. Excuse me. With God, he has salvation. With God, he has hope. Again, with God, he is able to have peace and rest even in the face of great trials. So here's what he must do. And here is what he encourages other people to do. Again, David takes his real life experience and uses it to teach others. So this is the first verse. I guess really verse number 8 is the first verse of the teaching section of this psalm. So trust in him at all times. Now he's speaking to the people. Trust in him. Trust in Yahweh at all times, you people. Pour out your heart before him. God now is not just my refuge. God is our refuge. So the experience that David went through with the times of his enemies and how God supported him in his fights against his enemies and his struggles with his enemies of all shapes, sizes, and kinds, and varying degrees. David says, my experience can be your experience too, because God is not only my refuge, but again, God is our refuge. David was in covenant with Yahweh, and the people as a whole were in covenant with Yahweh, and they could experience that refuge as well. So verses 9, 10, 11, and 12 all get again to some wisdom, a wisdom portion of the psalm, a teaching portion of the psalm. And it begins with what is shared for us in verse number 9. Common people are only a vapor. Important people an illusion. Together on a scale, they weigh less than a vapor. This is very Ecclesiastes sounding. And in fact, I think the vapor idea is the word hevel from from Ecclesiastes, where everything is vanity, everything is worthless. The same idea is here. And notice that the reality of being only a vapor and being an illusion, weighing less than a vapor. This is true whether you're a common person, whether you're just a regular person, or whether you're somebody who is important. At least you think you're important. No matter your status, whether you're at the top of the totem pole or at the bottom of the totem pole, excuse me, the reality is you are in the same position. You are nothing. You're nothing in respect to God. You have no confidence if there is no God. And if your confidence is not in God, then you really have no reason to be confident. And maybe here what David is trying to get at is that you don't need to put your confidence in those people either. Because he goes on to talk about in verse number 10, place no trust in oppression or false hope in robbery. Remember, he's already talked about how his hope and his trust are in God alone. Definitely do not put trust and hope in evil and wickedness. Even in something that can be amoral, something that has no either immorality or morality to begin with, just the idea of wealth, something that is neutral. Even if your wealth increases, don't put your heart in that because wealth is not trustworthy. So people are not trustworthy. Let's follow here. Verse 9, people are not trustworthy. Verse 10, oppression and robbery, sin are not trustworthy. The end of verse 10, wealth is not trustworthy. Nothing has shown itself to be trustworthy, to be hope-filled, to be something we set our heart on, except God alone. Verse 11, God has spoken once. I have heard this twice. Strength belongs to God, and faithful love belongs to you, Yahweh. For you repay each according to his works. He is a just God. And those who are willing to do what David says he was doing in resting in God, putting faith in God, trusting in God, again, not putting hope, not putting trust, not putting any sort of confidence in these other things, people, oppression, robbery, power, wealth, none of that. None of those things are where David found his confidence. No, those things are in God alone. And for those who do that, they will gain strength. They will experience, verse 12, Yahweh's faithful love. And at the end of the day, they will experience the blessings of faithfulness. Whereas those who do what is warned against in verses 9 and 10, they will suffer for that. Those who trust in God will be blessed, but those who suffer will be those who have put their confidence in something else, because at the end of the day, we all know this. Everything else is going to let us down. People will let us down. Wealth will let us down. Power, influence will let us down. But with Yahweh, in Yahweh alone, will we find our rock? Will we find our salvation? Will we find our stronghold? Will we find our glory, our refuge, our peace, our rest? Only these things can be found in God alone. May we never, never put any confidence or trust in anything else. If you have any questions or comments about Psalm 62, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And I appreciate you reading along with me on this Wednesday. Looking forward to being with everybody tonight for our Bible study beginning at 7 o'clock. We'll be back reading again on Friday, reading together from Psalm 63, a shorter psalm, just a few verses. We'll read about praising God who satisfies. Looking forward to reading that with you then. Take care and God bless.